Schumann infuses his last two etudes with the now familiar theme of death, but evolving and transforming it continually more and more over time from its original statement. Although it clearly maintains its shape, it nevertheless becomes more and more vital. We have already seen that it became, in a toccata variation, the personification of joy of life, the joy of being, the joy of work, the joy of creation, infused with great humor and inviting laughter. Such an incredible life-driving force, a vital message, is a rare gem, and it's difficult to find anything in the whole musical literature that matches his joyful expression. Because even the most joyful pages of Beethoven's creativity, including the famous Gloria from the Ninth Symphony, are more philosophical, less vital, and belong more rather to utopian philosophy of democratic aspirations and folk vernacular, whereas Schumann is all very vital. Even his enjoyment is an exclusively earthly happiness, accessible to every person. No composer spoke so convincingly about this as Schumann. This is a very original philosophy in music, which probably only Schumann gave to us in his masterpieces. And the last two masterly sketches, as we get closer and closer to the final, he plunges into his favorite atmosphere, his favorite element. This is ball. Ball, masquerade. Of course, in his fantasy, the dream ball, not the real one. Though the first, through the first 9 etudes or 9 variations, we had all sorts of images, but we did not have a ball yet. And here is luxurious ball. There I etuded number 9 and 10, or rather it is 9 etudes and 8th variation. There is a slight confusion here because something is inserted later and something without a name, which could either be a variation or etude. But nevertheless, we will speak of the scores as he indicates in the notes. The sequence is not difficult to determine when we put it all together. I also wanted to say that many musicians are rather unreasonable without understanding the value, the great artistic value of this work. They insert etudes that were excluded from publications during the life of Schumann. And this is a very big mistake, because Schumann rolled out a number of variations, a series of sketches, only because they did not meet his creative standards, his artistic aspiration. They excluded etudes, which are just exercises that did not rise to the high level of artistry he demanded of all his published editions. And it is completely understandable why Schumann excluded them. And it is not in equal measure as completely incomprehensible why Brahms let his emotions override artistic judgment when he chose to reinsert them into the first posthumous edition. It was his initiative to include so-called posthumous etudes that were not printed during the life of Schumann. I'm afraid that Brahms also did not view those etudes with the critical eye, ear, and objectivity of the original composer. The work which we now enjoy are indeed artistic miracles and prophecy. And formally placing completely unsuccessful works, not reaching this level, the prophetic level of the miracles that were excluded in this cycle, Brahms showed a very great insensitivity, incomprehension, and utter irresponsibility towards the will of author. It seemed that only the author saw the great artistic value of the works that he created. But I'm very happy that we now see all this together, and it will remain with us forever and ever. As I told you in previous series, that all his beautiful colleagues, and Chopin, Liszt, and others, they couldn't understand how far he ran away, broke through the time limits. So the ninth etude, ninth variation, ball. Why do I say with such confidence that it is a ball? Well, because there are certain, as I said, symbols. There are already musical symbols that Schumann invented, introduced, which he turned to all his life, which he developed all his life, which became an independent language, which works consciously and subconsciously. It already tells us where the ball, where the hero, where is Paganini, and so on and so on and so forth. The three-meter rhythm of the ball is always a portrait of crowd for Schumann in his language. So you can go to the second opus, Papillons, and find a 3-meter portrait of a whispering crowd, advancing on the hero in such music. It is always an advancing, excited, a little bit silly, but charming, luxuriously elegant crowd. And we see the same thing here. Grandly, technically written compared to the second opus. A downward avalanche of sounds that portrays the crowd. Again, there is a conceptual theme hidden here. It is engraved with these figures. Incredible beauty. And then again, it is very beautiful. This is already a real orchestration. Just listen to what each individual voice creates. Here we have 5 voices, only in one hand. They're not chords, as an experienced musicians might perceive. But rather this is a solo voices, which are interacting in a very strange polyphony chord-like, folding into chords. As I often said before, we looked at earlier, in previous variation, in previous etudes, the confusion comes from the very beginning, from the difficulties of separating the theme from the voice, which read as a series of chords, as you remember, where everything conventional is already challenged and innovated at once. And it continues throughout the entire work. Well, it's very difficult because we have to engage all our fingers, all of our 10 fingers. We have to decompose into separate voices, separate instruments, so that can be formed from individual voices into chords, rather than played chords, at which point it turns into a rather trite performance that masks the true inherent richness and would, if so played, add little to musical discussion. So I want to decompose this course, divide it to what's happening here, to show how and where the tapestry is woven. For example, the basses, double basses, cellos, pizzicato. In the middle voices we hear the French horn, the hunting horn, which symbolize the appearance of the crowd, and the beginning of the ball, the fantastic ball. И охотничий горны, который символизирует о появлении толпы и начале бала. There are, of course, very serious tasks for all kinds of motor matters between the brain and muscle skills, control. And at the same time, we still have 3 voices placed within the limits of the right hand, which create this noise, almost hunting noise, preceding the anticipating the immediate appearance of the luxuriously attired couples. But who will be placed in the first rows? Hussars. Hussars who influenced the entire musical lives of Liszt and Chopin and Schumann and many others, of course. Even in the epistolary heritage, we can find in Liszt the whole chapters on the luxuriousness of hussars, their dances, their clothes, their military tools. He writes in a great detail, including describing gilded buttons, mother of pearl, on all sorts of jewelry, hats and everything else, etc., and on and on and on. Same here. It's a pride of any ball, and therefore the themes of hussars live in the consciousness of Liszt, Schumann and Chopin and many others, as I say, they are expressed constantly. This is in Papillons already in Opus 2. We can see the appearance of the hussars and the Hungarian hussars. This is a hussar theme. Here's, of course, there can be only one choice. It's a typical Hungarian, Transylvanian a little bit intonation, belongs to these nations. Then we see the typical Hungarian cadence, already in Papillons. That shows when the hussars click their legs and kneel, then make all sorts of pas and knees. The same thing are here, only in a more diverse and luxuriant form. All this is expressed. So the crowd is approached, but the theme is not lost. The theme of death is hidden here, then becomes joyful. So see, it all depends how you look at life and death. And Schumann showed it very well. This theme practically does not change, formally. It becomes major or minor in the variation of joy of being, but it sounds amazingly free, even in the minor, becoming like a joyful song, a flowery, dashing, lively. All this it is. So it's a great philosophy also here. From the different points of view we see in the death and all this transformation. Now we see the magnificently dressed people is coming towards us. A huge ball is coming, approaching us. The following again we hear military horns, French horns, double basses, then the scene moves apart and the hussar mob falls on us. 100 hussars were dancing toward us, and here they start to execute their folk dance. And again, this is, of course, it's all quite difficult to show, because it's all laid out in different voices and different hands. So what the left hand is doing all the hussar steps. Here's precisely the cadence of the hussars, when they click their feet and kneel in front of the lady. So the hussar cadence, the hussar dance, with the turning and falling into the knee, is only in one middle voice, which the left hand leading in a double voice narration. Here it is a hussar knee, and in the upper voice we still have 4 or 5 different voices, which look like chords, but not chords, but they're differently synthesized. Differently synthesized instruments. Now my point of support completely lost, so it was very, very difficult for me to keep balance. But now I have a right hand on which I can lean, and of course it will be much simpler. because the vestibular apparatus works with us, since at least it's easier for a person to keep a balance. Look what a beauty! Feel this fervor of a heated human, the luxuriously dressed dancing male body in the form of brilliant golden hussar, which is always present at the pride of any ball, and who lives in the mind of Schumann, who turns the hussar appearance into a symbol that should be easily read. There's such a boldness. And then, continuing the text, the spirit of Paganini, which does not give rest to friends, Schumann and Liszt, also adds to the narrative. The following phrase, just look at this. You see pizzicato here. Because it's him, of course. This picture is absolutely fantastic. Schumann always fantasizes. It's never real bull. It is always flying spirits, persons in the air who saw in his imagination a completely cosmic, cinematographic, the cosmic one. We can now represent a little bit possessing modern cinema, which was in his head, in his brain. A staging of the images and pictures, and you see how many pictures already. We have already seen a crowd, hunting horns, a crowd that breaks into our consciousness, further luxurious passes of hussars. And the spirit of Paganini from above. And all this falls together and flies away in the stream of cold air which Schumann lets out here at the very end. Let me put these pictures together now. So I may place before your eyes at least three images: the hussars, the spirit of Paganini, and how they fly away. This is incredible beauty of thinking of embodiment in music. This is the famous German romantic fantasies. We can compare it even with German Bulgakov. Of course, it comes from Hoffmann. Well, this is a national character. It links also German and Russian fantasies. All these fantasies, of course, came to the Russian consciousness much later, and the embodiment of which perhaps the only one Bulgakov became in Russian literature. But here, you see in the year 1834, this phantasmagoric thinking of symbols and spirits, a cinematic mind, completing a fictional cosmic world of Schumann's consciousness.